So let's talk about money a little bit. Many of us handle money every day, and we may not be aware of how it came into existence and how it came first to be used. But on the history records, what we know is that different articles were used to represent money at different times in history. One of the most ancient forms of money that was used to be salt. Then by the African people, they started to use shells, seashells, and cowrie shells in the case of Nigeria. And then later on, coins were introduced. And then eventually, the Chinese introduced paper money. In American history, the use of paper money came into existence during a time when gold and silver coins were used, but instead of people walking around with bags filled with coins, which eventually became heavy if you were too wealthy, what would happen is they would issue something that would refer to as a gold or a silver certificate. You would bring in your bags of coins to a repository, what was later called a bank. And what they would do in exchange for the quantity of coins that you brought in, they would issue what is called a certificate of ownership. This certificate would indicate the amount of gold that you deposited for safekeeping. These became known as gold certificates and silver certificates in the American economic system. Later on, they started issuing these certificates in denominations. So what it would have meant is you could have gone to a shop, a storekeeper, or whoever, and you could have taken one of the denominations of the certificate for the amount of gold that you have, and you could have given this to them as an exchange for whatsoever goods that you needed. So that would have been, in the American economy, the introduction of what we call paper money. Later on, over time, what happened is these certificates became the standard means of exchange. And then at that point, people started using these exclusively. But the key to that was that all of the certificates that were in circulation were in fact backed by the number of gold, by the amount of gold and silver that was actually owned by the person, and collectively by the entire community. So this is how today we use a paper dollar. Now again, over time, what happened is that the amount of certificates that were issued and that were placed into circulation was a lot more than the actual amount of gold and silver that was owned by the banks. All right, so basically what you had is a movement from gold and silver backed dollar to what is called, a lot of people use the term fiat currency, right? Meaning that what you are using is no longer a certificate that is backed by the equivalent in gold or silver, but what you are using actually is in fact a note that represents credit. All right, and at that stage in the history of economics, what developed was something called fractional banking. So the credit note became what is called fractional currency. All right, but I'm not trying to get too technical because I don't want to lose anybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep it as simple as I could. Now, you heard me use the term fractional currency. All right, let me explain why money is referred to as currency. The standard definition for money, at least the business definition, is that money is a store of value. What do you mean when you say store of value? Normally, for you to acquire any type of money, you would have to work or you would have to provide some sort of a service which you would be compensated for, and the exchange for that service is going to be in the form of money. So in reality, what money does is money is a fixed way of measuring the utility of the good or service that you offer to someone else. So if you work 8 hours and you work at a particular rate, the amount of money you would receive at the end of the week or at the end of the month would be a measure of what you exchange for the time that you put in and the work that you do. So that is what they mean when the definition says it's a store of value. And then what you do is this store of value, you go now and you use this to exchange it for a good or service. All right, now to explain what I really want to explain, why we use the term currency. All right, the reason we use the term currency, you all have heard of current as in electricity. Okay, basically, current or electricity is the movement of energy from one place to another place. This energy is what causes the lights in your house to emit what we refer to as light. Okay, this is what keeps us out of darkness. This is what causes your appliances to work. This is what causes your refrigerator to keep stuff cool. And if you use an electric stove, this is what causes your water to boil. So current moves. And the key to the word currency is a representation of the movement of energy. So this is why you call it currency, because when you have money, you don't keep it. What you do is you put it in circulation when you go and you purchase something, whether it be a good or a service. So therefore, for the economy to work and for it to flow, it requires currency. These notes that you use must be in continuous circulation. So that is what is represented in the term currency and current, something in continuous motion. All right. Also, as long as you're dealing with money, which is currency, you're going to hear people use the term currency. You would also hear the term dollars. You would also hear the term cents. You would hear the term wage. You would hear the term salary. Now, the term salary in particular is not very hard to figure, because the first 3 letters in the word salary is sal. And as I mentioned to you earlier, that salt at one point in history was currency. It was money. Okay? So hence a person says they work for a salary. Meaning, salt at the time would have been the medium that was used for storing the resourcefulness of money itself. So let's talk about money now in terms of other aspects of history. The Inca Empire in the Americas. I want us to think of this a little bit. All right, I'm going to read a little bit of history. Unlike the neighboring Aztec or Mayas, as some people pronounce it, who use goods such as beans and textiles to buy and sell products, there was no concept of money among the Incas. So we are saying that the Incas never used money. And as we know, the Incas built one of the biggest civilizations in South America. Let me continue to read. So the question is, so how did they manage to create the largest and wealthiest empire in South America? Through a highly regimented system known as the mita. From the age 15, Incan males were required to provide physical labor to the state for a set number of days, sometimes as much as 2/3 of the year. They built public buildings and palaces, as well as an extensive system of roads, some 14,000 miles long in all, which linked the empire together and allowed for its ongoing expansion. In return, the government provided all the basic necessities of life: food, clothing, tools, housing, etc. No money changed hands. Indeed, even if there had been money, there was simply nowhere for an Incan to spend it. No shops, no market, no malls. All right, so the Incas built their entire society without the use of money. So there could be such a thing as a cashless society, as a society who does not use money. But let's talk a little bit and have so as to get an idea what life may have been like before the introduction of money. I'm sure we may have heard of something called bartering. Bartering would have been where people exchanged goods without the use of money. In other words, if you go to the market and you see someone selling peppers, you might see someone else selling avocados, you might see someone else selling tomatoes, various vegetables, whatever it might be. And then you may see someone selling pumpkins, watermelons. So the problem I believe they had is that I might be planting tomatoes and you might have a herd of cattle, of livestock. And I may want some meat. So how were we to determine how many tomatoes I was supposed to give you in order to get 2 pounds of meat? What if I wanted the whole cow for that matter? How many tomatoes would I have to give you to get the entire cow? So bartering proved to be a very challenging method of exchange. So because if I wanted to give you 1 tomato, could I get a whole cow? And I mean in terms of value, would 1 tomato be equal to an entire cow? Of course it's not. It won't be worth it. So then we had that challenge. If you were a person rearing livestock, and I was a person planting tomatoes, I may have wanted meat. And I might be able to get some meat, but then how many tomatoes would I have to give you? So bartering did in fact have its challenges. And I want to believe because of the challenges that man had with bartering, man would have developed some sort of a system to ensure that there was some sort of a value for value exchange. If you've ever heard the term value for value, meaning if I give up something that I have, I would want to get something that has equal value to what I'm giving up. Okay? I mean, this is like even human relationships. Most human relationships have what we call a value for value exchange. I do something for you, you do something for me. Right? That's just I think a form of natural equity, or what we call a form of natural justice. Right? So in terms of what people exchanged, one of the challenges were the fact that my good may not have the same value as the good that you're offering for sale. Now, One of the things, one of the challenges that was had, one of the challenges that existed with the use of money is that whatever medium a society choose to use as a medium of exchange or as money or as currency, you have to ask if the supply of this particular thing would be unlimited. All right. Now we're talking about before we started using paper money. So let's say, like in the African society, they would have used shells, seashells, right? In other societies too, I think they did use seashells. Seashells in an unlimited quantity, meaning would we always be able to guarantee a fresh supply of shells to have in circulation so that people could exchange? How to do we deal with the fact that there are some people who are wealthier than others? In other words, the people who we refer to as wealthy people would be people who would have access to large quantities of whatever the medium of exchange is, right? Basically, they would be hoarding. Today, we have a nice term for people who hoard. We say they are wealthy. All right. But again, because today we don't use the type of medium, we use fractional and we have things like credit and banking system. Now you could hoard money, you could have it in abundance without it being an inconvenience for you. So let's talk a little bit, because we reach a stage now where we're talking about fractional, right? And I don't want to get too much into that because that is a little bit complicated and I may lose a couple of people. So let's don't talk about fractional currency. Let's talk about credit a little bit. For the persons who viewing who have a little bit of knowledge about accounting, they would have heard two major terms that is used in accounting. Any form of journal or any records that you use, you would have what is called debit, and you would also have what is called credit. Now, the term debit, most people would associate it with the term debt, owing something. Whenever you have a debit account, that is an account that you put money into. So the term deposit would also be synonymous with debit. Credit, on the other hand, represents the opposite. So one would be where you put money in, while the other would be where you take money out. So we want to be clear. For that matter, I would give some definitions just to be clear so that we are clear on exactly what it is we're talking about. All right? Debit would represent an entry recording a sum owed. All right? Listed on the left-hand side or column of an account. All right? This, of course, would apply to what we refer to as double entry system of bookkeeping, where each debit has a corresponding credit entry. All right? Now, as I mentioned, a debit account would be where you normally deposit money. And then in this account, what you would do is you would go in and you would take that same money back out. All right? So normally, when you remove the money from your account, it is referred to as money debited from the account. All right? Now, the other term that I mentioned is the term credit. All right? Credit is the ability of a customer to obtain goods or services before the actual payment, based on the trust that payment will be made in the future. That is the credit that is extended to individuals. But in terms of recording, as far as the double entry is concerned, credit represents an entry recording of a sum received listed on the right hand side of the column of an account. All right, so basically when we talk about the double entry principle, all right, we're talking about this sort of T-shaped kind of a thing. All right, where you have a column on the left and a column on the right. Credit is normally on the right. Debit is normally on the left. So there you go. So you will have a debit entry here, and you will have a credit entry on the other side. So if for any reason you decide you want to start keeping records of the way you keep money, you don't have to be an accountant, but this is the simple process that you use, where you have the debit on one side and the credit on the other side. All right. Again, I'm going to explain this. The credit entry is what you receive. But as mentioned in the first part of the definition of credit, it mentioned this being the ability of the customer to obtain goods and services without paying right away. All right, it is trust that you receive, where the payment is going to be made in the future. All right, whereas in the case of the debit, when you have a debit account, it would mean that this is the money that you would be going in and you would be removing from the account, right? So I'm writing it here so we could all see it. So in this case with the debit, you would be putting money in, but with the objective of removing the money. All right, so you would hear all these accountants would use the term double entry principle and all this business. And you will hear people talk about debit and credit. But it's a simpler way really to look at it. You have what is referred to as income, which is a dirty word, and I would explain why. And then you have expenditure. Income represents the money coming in. That's why you use the word income. And I would explain just now why it's a dirty word. And then you have expenditure or expense, which is the money going out. All right. Let me tell you why I say income is a dirty word, right? Because income, by legal definition, represents money that you invest for the purpose of profit. However, most financial institutions and governmental institutions, whenever they use the word income, it means they're going to tax you. That is what it means in simple terms. However, for the average person who gets out there and work hard every day, the reason you work is not to get a profit. Basically, you work in order to be able to take care of your responsibilities and to be able to take care of your family and your bills and that sort of a thing. The correct term for that money that you receive after you work hard is actually the money you earn for your livelihood. I want people to kind of take note and try to learn that term. Instead of using the term income to represent what you work for, that should actually be your livelihood, meaning that's the way you make your living. All right? Now, let's talk about your living wage, which is referred to by the government as income. And let's talk about the term expenditure. All right. What happens here? Your living wage, which you may have direct deposited, might be coming through the bank, or you may take your living wage home and have it under your mattress. God forbid a fire break out, you will lose every dime you have. So the bed mightn't be the best place. We might suggest credit union for that. And then you have your expenditure, right, on the other side. Because what you earn from working at the end of the month or at the middle of the month or at the end of the week, you have to take some of this money and you have to pay bills, figure out how much passage you need, figure out how much lunch you need, figure out how much money you have to put aside for buying clothing to wear. So that would represent the expenditure side of things. That is money that you would be taking and using it in order to have some convenience, right? Normally the three basic things we talk, the three main convenience that humans need is we need food to eat, we need clothes to wear on our backs, and we need to have somewhere to live. So somewhere to sleep when the night comes, somewhere to take a shower, brush your teeth in the morning before you have your breakfast, clothes to put on, and then if you gotta go to work, you gotta travel to go to work. All right? But I mean, we could talk about going to work by itself because that's a topic by itself. Because remember, you do not start getting paid until you get on your job. But from the time you get up in the morning and you start brushing your teeth, you know you're preparing to go to your job. But we don't get paid for that. But I was a labor specialist, so you know I just consider things people normally don't think about. You should actually be getting compensated from the time you get up in the morning and starting to prepare for the people work, okay? But you don't get paid for that. You get paid when you get on the job and you clock the card, or your supervisor or whoever acknowledge that you arrived to work, and they would probably make some sort of either mental note or they would actually make a record. But let's go back to what we're talking about, which is your living wage, which the government and your employer and everybody have to call an income. And the reason I had to call it that is because, you know, you have various things you just have to pay from your salary. So let's talk a little bit about that. You go to work, you put in your 8 hours every day. And if you're a weekly paid person, weekly, W-E-E-K-L-Y, not W-E-A-K-L-Y, because sometimes when you're weekly paid, you just be weekly paid. You know what I mean? All right. But let's talk about that a little bit. If you're weekly paid, or even if you're collecting a salary, right? Sal being salt, coming from the word salt, which was currency back in the days. There are certain deductions that are made from your living wage, from your salary, or the government would prefer the term income, right? We have certain type of things we pay. There is a pension plan that's called the National Insurance Fund. It is something that most locals pay, most people in Trinidad pay. And this insurance fund, what you're doing is you actually saving money that you deposit into an account every time you draw a salary. And if you're weekly paid, some type of deduction is being made or should be made to go towards your national insurance. So people, if you know you have a job and you're collecting a salary, your employer is supposed to be paying national insurance. And it is not for his benefit, it is for your benefit. Because once you reach the age of retirement, what you pay into that insurance, you would be entitled to receive as a benefit. Some people use the term benefit. I don't particularly like the term benefit because it's your money that goes into the account. So nobody ain't doing you no favor. What you doing is you saving money so that when you're retired, you could get something back. Meaning when you can't work no more and you're old and you sit down in your rocking chair and you're smoking your pipe, you have a little bit of thing pittance to collect because while you were working, while you were productive, you were contributing towards your retirement. This is what is called national insurance. The money does not belong to the government or anybody else, it belongs to you. Because while you're working, a little bit is being taken out from every check and placed into an account that belongs to you. All right. Actually, I have one of the a printout of my national insurance right there, but I don't always see on my personal business, so I can't show it to you all. All right. Beside national insurance, we have something called the Board of Inland Revenue. Right. And we have something called income tax. All right. I mentioned income being a dirty word earlier, right? But taxes are a necessary part of any society, any organized society. Why? Why do you pay taxes? Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. You just use the pavement to walk sometimes, right? You just use the road to drive. Yeah, street lights. Yeah, so that you don't be walking in the dark if you happen to be coming home after the sun goes down. These things are paid for with taxes. So most organized societies charges a tax to its citizens or to its nationals. Somehow I prefer the word national better than citizen, because the word citizen, the etymology of the word talks about city dwellers, right? That is the first part of the word is city, and zen is the last part. So the word actually means people who dwell in the city. So then, sorry, people who live in the country, you are not considered citizen by the strict definition of the word, right? But normally when they use that word, they're talking about nationals, meaning everybody born in that country, all right? But there's not an etymology class, so I wouldn't go too much into that. But I like to sort of explain things and break things down so that people could understand it. So taxes in any organized society becomes a necessity. It's a necessary thing for people to be able to get services. So you see, whenever you walk into a government office, we don't talk about the treatment you just get, right? But we will just talk about the service that you go to get. Let's say you wanted a birth paper, or you wanted your ID card, or any of these things. When you pay taxes, your tax money contributes towards these services that are provided by the various government agencies. All right. By that, what do I mean? I mean the money that they just take from your pay, that's what they just use it to do. So technically, I'm telling you all that the people who providing you these services, and I know I might have some public servants listening to my thing, don't get vexed with me, I'm just telling the people the truth a little bit. The people who providing you these services, you're paying them through your taxes. Okay, the government have other sources of revenue, by the way. It's not only your tax money that does have coming in, right? We could talk about things like the petrodollar, right? The oil money now. That is a form of income. We could talk about the pitch rate. That is another source of income. And we could talk about many other things. We could talk about Caribbean Airlines. We could talk about the ferry service. We could talk about a range of things. So taxes is not the only place the government has get money. So don't feel all you could curse out every public servant who are treating all their right and telling them, it's my tax money that's pay. Yeah, your tax money does contribute towards the salary. But that is not the only thing that pays them, all right? So let's go back to what we're really talking about now. So we're saying that you make contributions each month, and this contribution goes towards the time that is going to come when you're not going to be able to work. All right? So the Board of Inland Revenue and National Insurance, the money that they collect is actually for services, and in the case of the National Insurance, it is like you saving for the rainy day. Remember we was talking about the Isuzu. I'll do that on our next video. Right. Well, the Isuzu had in it like what we would call an insurance also, which is an emergency fund. So even all these concepts we talk about that we probably was introduced to during the colonial era by the British, it actually didn't originate with them. It actually started as an African tradition, right? As the Isuzu, and as an emergency fund, and as an investment club. Well, not an investment club, a savings club, right? So these concepts is not really foreign to us. They're part of our own tradition. So we mustn't be afraid of it. But sometimes, you know, when you have people in power, that has kind of become abusive now. So there are processes in place through the political system where we could use to kind of monitor these things. And I ain't really mean to get into politics, you know, but as we're talking about money now, there's somehow a relationship between money and governance. So that is the only reason I mentioned the word politics. Other than that, I am not a political person. All right, because I have nothing to do with politicians and nothing to do with politics. All right, spirituality, yes. Tradition, yes. Culture, yes. Politics, no. All right. So today's stream is about money for those who joined late, because I realized the numbers starting to increase, right? And I basically was explaining how money does work and what money is about and how it originates and the history of money. But for the regular person just like you and me, our concern is how we deal with money. All right? So I explain what is debit, what is credit, what is living wage, what is income, what is expenditure. So now I'm going to talk about two important things. All right? And one of them is what we call spending. And the other one is investing. And there are two very, very, very important things that we have to remember. If you ain't remember nothing else I say today, try to remember these two things. When you spend money, it do come back. That is the first thing. If you go and you buy a doubles and you eat it, the money you get the doubles, man, it ain't coming back. Where it might end up is in the toilet being flushed, right? So that money gone. It can't come back. Because the word spend means to give off. Right? So there's, you know, the little etymology that's coming now. The word spend means to give off. All right? So when you spend money, you're giving it off. What you would get is something in return, might be a service or a good or whatever. And then that is it. You have nothing to get back. Now, on the other hand, the word investing would mean if you take your money and you put it here, that money is going to produce more money for you in various forms and in various ways. But today's program is about money. We ain't going too deep into investment, but I'll talk a little bit about it. When you earn your living wage, if you take some of the money from your wage and you invest that money, then you could have an income due to your investment. That, my friends and my people, the government entitled to some. It's called taxes. So when I was talking about your living wage and versus income, your living wage is what it is used to live, to pay your bill, to pay your little rent, to maintain your house, whatever. Them things is your livelihood. But now we gone from that. Now we actually going out to what income actually represents. Income is returns on investment. So investment is what we're discussing right now. So we talk about investing in yourself. Remember that video? Okay, if you didn't see it, go back and watch it. We talk about investing in yourself. We talk about reading. We talk about educating yourself. We talk about all these things as an investment. You know why these things are an investment? Because these things does bring a return to you. Yeah, educating yourself does bring a return. Developing skills does bring a return. Spending time reading and learning things that you do not know, it brings a return. All right? So today now, we ain't talking about investing in yourself now. We're talking about using your money to invest. Using your money to make more money. We're also talking about spending your money. When you spend it, nothing comes back. When you invest your money, something comes back. Now, you have all types of different investments. Yeah? You have high yield investment. You have low yield investment, meaning the interest that you earn on it, small. That is low yield. High yield is when you invest the money and you get a big return on it. Right? That is kind of like the thing with that going wrong now with the calling a susu, which is not a susu, eh? I hope all you did see that stream. I explain the difference between what they're doing now out there and what an actual a susu is. Alright. What they're doing out there now, the gifting circle, I shouldn't say they because somehow I find myself involved in it even though I ain't supposed to be doing it. Anyway, what they're doing now out there, have a high yield on your investment. You're putting out $100 and you gain $800 on that $100. So that is what you call a high yield investment. So while we're on the note of investment, we talk about low yield and high yield. The low yield tend to have a little profit and the high yield tend to have a big profit. Now, there is something called risk involved. Generally, investments that have high yield where you're making plenty money, it have plenty risk. You know, like if you go and you join the gifting thing and it busts, you ain't getting back nothing, not even what you put out. That is high risk and high yield. Low risk and low yield would be like the regular A susu. You know, if you bought $20 a week and the susu is a month, let me say, well, some months there's have 5 weeks, some there's have 4. So let me say you're in a 5 weeks month. Right? If you put out 20 a week, you won't get back exactly where you put out 100. So in this case, you ain't really getting this is not really an investment per se because there really are no interest on it, right? However, you're sure to get your money back. So I would equate that almost to a low yield. Low yield investment tend to be a lot more secure, meaning the chances of you losing your money is almost negligible. It's a small possibility that you would lose your money. So anytime you hear people talking about high yield investment and low yield investment, you must always keep in mind that anything that giving you a high profit, chances are is very risky. And the ones that giving you the low profit, it might be a more secure investment. Meaning you will make no big money, but you're guaranteed to get a little bit that is there. Well, let me don't say guarantee, but the risk is less of a possibility of you losing your money. All right? Now, for the members of our community, right? I don't really advertise nobody and thing, you know, unless they're a member of our community, right? But in Trinidad, there are only, as far as I know, a few tried and true places that people have put the money with the money that's sure to make a little interest and you don't really lose too much on your money, right? One of them is the credit union. And the other one that I know about that I've been in for years and years and years is Unit Trust. All right, so I ain't trying to tell all you what to put all your money here. So don't want to say if I've been married, then tell all you put all your money here. But I just kind of trying to give you all a kind of ballpark idea what I just do in reality and what I would kind of share with you all. That was going on. I ain't advising all the way to invest. But what I'm doing is I just sharing with you all what I have done. All right? My children and them born, I make sure I open a little unit trust for them. And whenever I remember, there's a little money in it, you know? And what I realized has happened, you don't get no big profit, but I could assure you at the end of every quarter, or every 6 months, or every year, when you pick up the little statement where there's come in the mail and you read it, you see the amounts increasing. All right? And I know that has happened with the credit union. Right now, I am about 3 credit unions. Right? I am not a person that's deal a lot with banks. And members of the community, I'm not telling all you don't deal with the bank, but I'm telling you all have to look at what you're getting in terms of interest versus the fees that you're spending to pay for the services that you receive. All right? Well, I've been going a little while now, so I'm marking the time a little bit. I have about 6 more minutes. So I'll try to close off this by talking about the last 2 subjects, which is spending and investing. But we still on money. You all get an idea of the history already. And you all kind of get an idea about debit and credit. You all get an idea about the money that goes out that you actually remove from the account being the debit. And the credit being basically 2 things, right? One of them being the idea of you having access to goods and services and you're actually paying for it later. That is credit, right? And the other aspect of credit is the fact that how it relates to the double entry principle. That form of credit would represent money that was received. So those would be the things that we've already kind of clarified. Spending, remember, you don't get nothing back except whatever value in the goods or service that you utilize. And that is dead money. That ain't bringing back no money for you. It give you the service, it give you the good, and that is all you get. However, when you invest now, your money is going to bring you more money. So those were the things we basically discussed. All right? Listen, all you forgive me, I didn't remember to read my favorite Udu in starting, but I will read it now, and then we go close off. I kind of like A.G. Ogby, so I'm going to read one of the essays first from A.G. Ogby, right? It reads, if one is rich without good character, the wealth belongs to someone else. That which we are after is character, good character. If one is blessed with children without good character, the children belongs to someone else. That which we are after is character, good character. If one is blessed with houses without good character, the houses belong to someone else. That which we are after is character, good character. So people, basically that is it for today's stream. I just reviewed what was discussed today. And I hope that we remember that is important that we pay tax on the investment. It's important that we know that we must invest our money. Spending, some of it you cannot avoid, but the excessive spending is not good. Because that way you wouldn't be able to save anything to invest, or you wouldn't be able to save something for the rainy day. And with that, I will say Odabo, and we would speak again next Friday with some financial empowerment and me encouraging you all, members of our community, to engage in collective economics. Remember, watch where you're spending your money, because when you spend it in the community, it's actually an investment in yourself. Remember that, and most important, remember, we must mind we own business, because ain't nobody else going to do it for us. Odabo. Oh, and I forget, most importantly, remember, all the things we discuss here is for members of our community. There is a series of videos that you can see. You can see it on our page right here. You could also see it on YouTube, where you would look for Fahim Ali Bey or Ifa Bemero, home of Ifa tradition. I almost forget to tell you all that. So if you want to get an education on anything related to finance, the history of the Orisha tradition in Trinidad, any such things, please visit me on YouTube, as well as you could visit us on Facebook. All right? Odabo.